welcome to Hangout Café. Ladies and gentlemen, our guest today is Toyosi Obatusin. But before we go into talking about the topic, we're going to, this month in most parts of the world, September is Sickle Cell Awareness Month, where different groups come together to raise awareness about sickle cell. Now, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but I know that in the UK, the little research that they've done has shown that about 15,000 people, I'm sure it's probably more, have sickle cell disease. In America, I think I saw that it was about 100,000, which is a lot. So, but I can imagine that with the rest of Africa, there'll probably be much more than that. But we've got the perfect person on today to help us to raise awareness about sickle cell disease, to talk about it, because she's had to live with it. So she's living with it, actually. And she's lived with it for the past 50-something years. You know, you never tell people a lady's age. So she doesn't even look her age. So, welcome again, Toyosi Obatusin.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I understand you're looking more at the ceiling, so I'm just trying to adjust.
Okay, I think it's fine now.
Okay.
I think it's fine. Yeah, we can see the back, not the ceiling.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's fine.
Okay.
So, Toyosi, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I don't care telling about my age. I'm 55 years old. I'm a doctor. I'm a mother of 6 children, 2 biological, 4 with us here, 2 in Nigeria. I don't know. I'm married, and I work as a GP. Yeah.
You work as a GP. Okay. So, you've lived with sickle cell disease for 55 years. Now, as far back as you can remember, when was the first time you knew that you had sickle cell? Can you remember?
I mean, I don't really remember a time. It's just who I am, who I've been. I've always had it. I don't have any recollections of a first time. Okay. It's just something I lived with, or I live with. It's just something a challenge that my family had. So, and actually, my mother did suffer with sickle cell as well.
Oh, sickle cell.
Yeah. Okay. My mother suffered with sickle cell, and in my family, myself and my 2 younger siblings all had sickle cell. So it was just us.
Okay, but when you were younger, did you notice that there are lots of things at school that you couldn't do compared to the rest of your classmates?
Things in school, I mean, it's really just that we miss school. We miss school a lot of the time because we were possibly unwell. Maybe getting older, secondary school, I know there were trips I wasn't allowed to go on. So my dad wouldn't, travel abroad with school. I did French secondary school. So the trips, Togo, trips to France, I wasn't allowed to go on those trips. Yeah, because my dad was concerned that I might be unwell. So yeah, little things like that. But yeah.
So let's just go back a bit. So when you couldn't do those trips, I know you said you can't remember when you first found out that you had sickle cell, but did you ever have a conversation with your parents like, oh, what is this? What's wrong with me and my siblings?
I don't know. I can't remember any such conversation. I don't know, truthfully.
when did you find out that your mom also had sickle cell?
I don't know.
You know what I'm asking? Because I'm thinking, is it that back then parents didn't really have this conversation about, oh, sickle cell with
Yeah.
so like everybody just got on with it.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I really have no idea. I don't think there's any delving into it that will help because I really
Didn't know.
have no idea. I knew I suffered with this, but I don't have any memory of any conversations.
Right.
It was just something.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you had to live with it. What tell us a little bit actually, let's go back. Tell us a little bit more about, I know you're a doctor. Tell us a little bit about sickle cell disease. Tell us about it.
So sickle cell is well, it's a blood disorder. And people who suffer with sickle cell disease, their genotype is SS. So, there are lots of kinds of genotypes, but mostly people could be AA, they could be AS, they could be SS. There are actually other hemoglobinopathies because you even have people who are AC, SC, and all, other sorts of things. And there's also sickle thalassemia. So there are different kinds of hemoglobinopathies. But so generally, I think A would be what people would term the ideal
Okay.
genotype. Now, people have a sickle trait, and incidentally, that sickle trait
Yeah.
it's sort of an West African thing because it was sort of a change that was it was a reaction to malaria,
Ah, okay.
actually, initially. So I think it was, what's the word I want to use now? Maybe it was let me just try to put it, maybe it was just the cells trying to adapt to malaria. And
Okay.
that's when that sickle gene was actually formed. And what you actually find is that people who are AS
Yeah.
don't react that badly to malaria because the sickle bit was protective.
Ah,
Okay.
that makes sense
So
now.
you find that people who are AA,
Yeah.
if they get malaria, they're really unwell. Whereas people who are AS cope
Yeah.
better with malaria.
That's interesting. That is quite interesting. I never realized that. This is the first time hearing about that.
Yeah,
Oh. In fact,
it was.
you know what? I'm AS, and I can't remember having malaria actually. I
Yeah,
can't remember having malaria.
yeah.
Wow.
It's protective. So people who are AS, they have the sickle trait,
Yeah.
but they're fine. They live life as normal. Most of them don't have, no problems, no bone pain, nothing at all. But if you actually suffer with sickle cell disease,
Yeah.
then it's a different ball game. It's being ill, it's bone pain. I know you've had other people who suffer on the thing, but it's excruciating pain. You cannot walk. Getting too hot is a problem, getting too cold is a problem, getting malaria is a problem. So anything can actually manifest in a crisis.
Okay.
And yeah, and it's just not knowing one day to the other, whether you're going to be well, whether you're going to be sick, not knowing what's going to, make you unwell, ending up in hospital. And anemia, obviously, anemia means your hemoglobin is low.
So
Some
yeah.
people need to have lots of transfusions. It's just, it can be a debilitating condition, and it's a painful condition.
Wow. But some people that was because I remember when we were having the conversation, you said some people have to have blood transfusion often,
Yes.
but you didn't have that. So how?
No. So obviously there's progress.
Okay.
made with sickle. All the time there's research, there's progress. And for over here, the way they manage people. So because what happens is the cells sickle,
Yeah.
and when they sickle, they actually block the blood vessels so that the blood doesn't flow properly, and that's why people get joint pains. And it can block anywhere. So it could block in the brain. People can have strokes, people can have chest crisis. It depends. It basically depends on what cell and what organ is blocked. Yeah.
So is there any way that one is better able to manage it? So for example, now because you've had it for such a long time, are there certain things you try not to do just so that you don't have a crisis?
So for me, basically was trying not to be exposed. So when I moved over to this country, was little things like you would never see me, well, you wouldn't see my legs basically.
Okay.
So I had to always try to be warm.
Okay.
I mean, it's different for different people, and I guess as you grow older, you know what triggers you.
Yeah.
So it's not getting too tired, making sure I drink enough so I don't get dehydrated, because if I'm dehydrated, that will cause, because the blood is sort of thicker, it will
Yeah.
cause it to um, block the cell. So it's really just different things for different people. So I just had to learn to pace myself.
Right.
And you just need to remember that there's some things you cannot do. Some people might do it, your friends might do it and get away with it. They're okay. You do the same thing, and hey presto, you're in hospital. I would go to parties in university, and the day after the party, my friends are taking me to hospital.
Mm.
So, not that that stopped me. I would still go the next time, but yes. So,
So actually, now that you mentioned university, at least some of your friends, if not most of your friends, knew when you were at uni that you had the sickle cell thing. Okay, because I
yes.
remember Emma, when she came on Hangout Café, she said a lot. In fact, I don't think any one of her friends knew that she had sickle cell. It was after she left uni that most of them found out. And she explained that there was this shame. She didn't want it. No, actually, it wasn't shame. I think she said it was, she didn't want people to pity her. Now, for you, I know that you don't talk about, you're very private person. You don't talk about all the things that you're going through. So why did you choose to come on now? Why did you agree to come? I know apart from me pestering you, why did you agree to come on now to share your story?
So, I mean, God has been good. God has been kind to me. So, apart from sickle cell, I mean, I'm coming to share a testimony and also to just encourage people
Okay.
to, donate blood, to be on a bone marrow register. We mentioned blood transfusions
Yes.
earlier on. But yes, we say I've lived with sickle cell all my life, but actually, I'm not living with it anymore. So basically, it's just to share the testimony.
So share, go and tell us about it.
So I suffered with sickle cell all my life. It's affected my entire life. I have had to cope with it, manage with it. And then despite that, I think also the good thing my parents did for us, we we knew that we suffered with this disease,
Yeah.
but we also knew that it was not and it would not limit us. We were not allowed to, we had to, with everything, we still had to excel.
Okay.
There were no excuses. When you're unwell, you're unwell. When you're well, you get up, you get on with it. There's no pity party here. This is where we are. This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Life goes on. So for us, I mean, I became a doctor. My younger sister was a lawyer. My younger brother was an engineer. So, you know, we went to school. There were no excuses. So I became a doctor. And then, well, living life with some limitations, but not anything that limited me in any way.
Yeah.
You mentioned not talking about it. I know that with work, and I understand what Emma was saying as well. It's not something that I discussed at work. And
Okay.
most people at work, they don't know that I suffer with sickle cell. First of all, I don't think it's really anybody's business. It's my private life.
Okay.
Um, and then I also think, secondly, I think you don't want people to look at you and judge you, with that illness, or try and
Label.
limit what you can do or where you can get to. So I'll use an example, not necessarily for me, but in a workplace, you don't want them to, maybe they're looking and they want to promote somebody and just think, oh, that person has that medical condition, so maybe
Right.
they're not going to be able to cope.
Okay. Okay.
So maybe professionally was really things like that for me. And I
Okay.
just thought, look, well, let's all be on a level playing field. My health condition is not your business.
Okay.
So I carried on with that, and then in 2019,
Yeah.
so I lost my younger brother in 2018. And in 2019, I was preparing, I bought my ticket, preparing to go back home to my dad,
Yeah.
1 year since my brother had died. And in March, so actually I remember I'd had maybe like a cough, cold, a bit under the weather, but nothing major. I
Yeah.
was in church on the Sunday, felt a bit down, no big deal. We were saying earlier about me and blood transfusions and not needing anything. Actually, for me, I didn't use any medication.
Right.
So even folic acid, which were all meant to all people who suffer with sickle cell, use your medicine, please. Use your folic acid, use your pen V, use everything. I was not a good example. I didn't use folic acid. I wasn't on anything at all. And I was hardly ever in hospital, maybe once every 3 years.
Okay.
So God, God has really been kind. And as we were saying, some people need regular transfusions. And I think maybe sort of every 12 weeks or so. That's how, you keep them crisis free.
Right.
Okay. So I hardly ever used to drop my hemoglobin. But when I was unwell this time, I just thought, so I had the cough, had the cold, I was okay, went to church on the Sunday, just generally feeling out of sorts.
Yeah.
Um, and tired. I remember the Monday, I think the Monday was Yomi's birthday. I know I was being sick. I was on. Well, I had a course to go to the next day, a safeguarding course. I got on the train. My husband took me to the station. I got to the station and I'm like, I can't get on the train alone.
Okay.
He got on the train with me,
Yeah.
took me to the course. We got to the station. The course place was like 5 minutes walk away.
Okay.
I looked at him, I said, I can't walk. We got in a taxi. In fact, the taxi driver said to us, it's just there. It will take you longer to get in a cab. You should
Yeah.
walk. I was like, I can't walk. Got in a cab, went there. He got me to the course, sat down for a while because I was really tired. I walked into the course. The course person looked at me and said, no, you can't be here.
Mm.
So I came back home. And the next day, I just thought, okay, I'm going to go to hospital.
Right.
So the next day, I mean, I went to a hospital where I was working anyway. So I got one of my colleagues to see me. I got in there and we checked my hemoglobin just there quickly. My hemoglobin was 5. Now, people's hemoglobins, the normal hemoglobin is between 11 and 15,
Wow.
usually. For someone with sickle cell, it's less than that.
Okay.
For me, my normal hemoglobin, I used to run at about 9.
Okay.
So I got in there, it was 5, and I knew I wasn't going home. And in my head, I just thought, okay, I need a blood transfusion. Give me a blood transfusion. I'll go back home.
Okay.
So I went to hematology. They did the bloods. Actually, when they did the bloods properly, my hemoglobin was 3.
Wow.
And they looked at me, and I remember when we got in there, I was meant to go to the ward. I started walking, and I looked at my husband. I said, I cannot walk. So he took me in a wheelchair. So when they checked my hemoglobin, it was 3. And they looked at me, and they couldn't understand how I was standing and not dead. Anyway, so they checked the hemoglobin, and then they came back later and they said to me, oh, that they're going to keep me. And I said to them, no, I'm not staying. Just give me blood and let me go home.
Okay.
And at that point, they came back and they were like, actually, this isn't just sickle cell, that it's leukemia.
Wow.
So that was the beginning of the next journey. So I was diagnosed with AML, which is acute myeloid leukemia, and which is the most aggressive of the leukemias.
Wow. So prior to that time, so it was only those few days that you experienced you were not feeling well.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. I think for other people, sometimes it might take a bit longer because leukemia isn't something, there might be people who are feeling tired for much longer and all. Yeah. So it's not usually or necessarily that quick.
I was going to ask because sometimes you hear, oh, I was feeling just like you're just feeling tired. It's like, how do you know when to check, with the doctors and when it's just normal tired? I know because you couldn't walk and all of that, so that was an extra thing. I've heard of people who say, oh, they had the headache, or someone had a headache, and then the next thing they found out that it was the tumor. But sometimes you just get headache. So how do we know, as a doctor, how do you know when to actually check something out, or it's just okay, give it a few days and you'll be fine?
I think we generally know ourselves with life. We know how we are. Now, I think when you're feeling a bit out of sorts, you don't run to the doctor straight away. We say help yourself.
Yeah.
Rest, do what you can do.
Yeah.
But if after 2-3 weeks,
okay,
you're still feeling out of sorts, then
yeah,
you need to see your doctor.
okay,
And I'm not saying necessarily that we do anything straight away, but if anybody were to come to me as a doctor
yeah,
and say they've been feeling tired all the time,
yeah.
and it's 4 weeks or more, then they need to be investigated.
Okay.
So it might just be baseline blood test. It might be to do with the thyroid. It can be any number of things, but you've been feeling tired 4 weeks, you're not feeling better. You need to see your doctor.
Okay. Okay, so you were diagnosed with leukemia and the journey started. So tell us more about it.
So basically, obviously that day, that was it. There was no going home for me. So I was admitted, and so 2019, March, I think I got the diagnosis on the 7th of March.
Okay.
But that was me done for that year. I was in hospital for the whole 2019, really.
Wow.
So I was basically in hospital that was it. Bar a week here and there,
Okay.
the hospital was my home. So I wasn't allowed. Well, I started chemotherapy 2 days later. Yeah, and the hope. So it was like, okay, this is leukemia. It's the most aggressive one. It's chemotherapy. So basically, you get once they've done the blood and they see that, you then have to have a bone marrow biopsy,
Okay.
which I had. So that's where they drill into your bone marrow, get samples out, and check. So it was like, well, you have to have chemotherapy. So I started chemo and they were like, well, you have chemotherapy. If it works, it
Yeah.
goes into remission, then, fine, it goes into remission. So I had my first lot of chemotherapy. And after the next bone marrow biopsy, they told me that it hadn't worked.
Whoa.
It didn't go into remission. And at that point, they now tell you that since, you will have more chemo,
Okay.
but obviously, if that hasn't worked, the
Yeah.
best chances are for a transplant.
Okay.
Because even if it does go into remission later without a transplant, chances are very slim. So that was it. I had the first lot of chemo. It didn't work. And then once you've had chemotherapy, you get neutropenic, which is where the cells get really low and you're susceptible to infection.
Yeah.
So you're not allowed out of hospital because basically chemotherapy is killing all your cells. So you're not allowed out of hospital. So I was in hospital. I think they allowed me out for a couple of days
Okay.
to just come back. I don't know if it was a couple of days. Olu picked me up. A few days, then to come and start the next lot. So first one didn't work, didn't go into remission, and then you go through, remember, actually talking about blood, I just said, so by the time I had that first lot, because we're talking about blood today,
Yeah.
by the time I had finished my first cycle of chemo,
Yeah.
I had 29 units of platelets. I went back to check. 17 units of blood. This is blood transfusions, platelet transfusions, because you go anemic, your platelets drop.
Wow.
If your platelets drop, there's a chance of bleeding to death.
Okay.
So they have to keep on transfusing you to keep
Wow.
you alive.
Wow.
So basically I was in there, went home for a few nights
Yeah.
and came back to hospital to start the next lot of chemo. So they now changed, since the first combination didn't work, they now changed the combination. I had the second lot of chemo,
Yeah.
and thank God, after the second lot of chemo, the leukemia went into remission.
Okay.
But we also knew at that point that, this isn't it. The fact that it's gone into remission is not the end of the journey. There's still a journey to carry on with. So yes, went into remission with the second lot of chemo. I then had to have a third lot of chemo to just try and nail it all down, by which time, obviously, all the hair is gone. I think I went into the hospital with braids or whatever. By the time after the second lot or first lot of chemo, by the time I was taking out the braids, obviously your hair, everything is coming out. Everything is coming out with it. So, hair loss. I mean, they actually counsel you before And they tell you all these things that can happen. The NHS is good. They say, oh, you lose your hair, you this, fertility, all of that. With fertility, I'm like, you guys, don't worry, fertility, I'm good.
I'm done.
Yeah, I'm done. It's okay. You lose your hair and all, and they tell you, oh, you can have wigs and all. For me, I'm like, in the scheme of things, even people who have hair is all wigs anyway. So, it doesn't really matter. I have hair, no hair. Yeah. So I guess that was it. And in when the first lot of chemo didn't work, I think for me, at some point in time, I made my peace.
Okay. Do you want to get a drink? Thank you so much, Toyosi, for sharing. We really do appreciate you.
So I made my peace, and I thought, well, if it doesn't work, if this is it, I'm dying.
Oh.
If I'm going to die.
Take your time. Take your time. Honestly, take your time. It's fine. You've been through a lot, so we understand. It's fine. And yes, everybody can see all the emojis. We love you. We're sending you home. Yes, thank God that you were able to share this testimony.
So I was like, do you know what? If I'm gonna die, I die. People die. People die every day. If God says it's time, it's time. I'm okay with it. So I made my peace with it. And I thought, my husband is a superhero.
He is. We appreciate you, Mr. Obatusin. Thank you.
And I thought, you know what? If I die, he's okay. He's all right with the children. They're gonna be fine. And I had no worries, no hesitations at all.
Okay.
But for him to be fair with him, he always knew, he always believed in his heart that this was not unto death.
Okay.
And he was like, well, this isn't what he has heard from God.
Right.
It's not happening. And I forgot to say that this isn't something I announced in church. The leadership of the church knew it. But for me, my priority at that time, I had to protect my dad.
Right.
He had just lost a son.
Yes.
And I thought,
his daughter has.
yes. And I thought, if my dad knows, I'm actually going to kill him. I didn't think he would be able to cope.
Yeah.
So I did not tell my dad. And in that managing to limit everything, we had to limit the number of people
that knew, yeah,
who knew about it. So yes, primarily because I had to protect my dad.
Okay.
But secondary, I didn't need the whole whatever. I really didn't need anybody's pity or the whole world knowing about it and saying this is what is going on with her.
Okay.
I needed people around me, specific people around me who would support me, who could be strong,
yeah,
who would be there. So I didn't have a million people.
Right.
But I had what we call my elephant pride. I had people around me who were there, who have always been there through thick and thin, and they were there. I was in hospital for almost 6 months, more than 6 months. I can say to you categorically that I didn't have a day, maybe one day, when I didn't have a visitor. And it's not like there was a rota or anything, but that was just it. So I knew, I just needed that. And as I say, it was primarily to protect my dad.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's strange how somebody hears something, they mention to somebody, next thing somebody is going to my dad to say, how is Toyosi doing?
Yeah. That's understandable. That's understandable.
So yeah, and actually my dad, I didn't tell my dad until I got better and I was out of hospital in 2020. And even at that time, after I told him, bless his soul, he's dead now. After I told him, he would, when I was telling him, he dropped the phone. I used to speak to my dad regularly on the phone. I would call him. I had to make a conscious effort to not pick up the phone times when I was meant to be at work. So he would call me, how are you? Or Sunday morning, he would be like, oh, aren't you in church? I'll say things like, oh, I'm joining online, because I was making a conscious effort not to lie to him.
Yeah.
But they were sort of half truth because he didn't know I was in hospital. So I'm gonna say, oh, I'll join second service, or I'll say, oh, my shift is this, or just to protect him. So my 6-7 months in hospital, he was not aware. I'm not sure why I got derailed. You must have asked me.
Let me go back. What about the children? How do they handle this?
Well, the children, obviously, we had to tell the children. I think maybe he just went back to uni, and I think we had to ask him to come back to London. And yeah, my daughter and, I can't remember. I think I can't remember if we told them together or separately, but obviously they had to know. This is it. I'm in hospital, got leukemia. It's another thing, we're just gonna have to deal with it. I don't know. I think thinking back now, I think we might have been a bit unfair on the children as well.
Why did you say that?
Because I think not telling everybody generally. I mean, there were people that knew. But I think maybe if they had told even more people, maybe they would have had more. My daughter was going to school every day and nobody in her school knew.
Wow.
And when I think back, I think that was possibly unfair, because if at least people in school knew, maybe she would have gotten more support that way. I mean, I was in hospital, obviously. There were times, she told me later, there were times she would be so upset. It was just she and her dad at home. She would have a go at her dad, for little things. And when I asked her later, she was like, I'm like, oh, so why didn't you say anything to me? And she was like, but Mom, you're the one who was going through it. So she didn't want to say how she was feeling with me. She didn't want to say anything to her dad, because my husband was going to church and working and marshalling and doing everything as normal. Wow. Half the people didn't know. He was just going and he was just getting on with it. He would come to hospital every evening. My daughter would come after school practically every day. So they were just carrying on with life.
So people wouldn't have known that there was anything going on?
No. A few people some people who didn't see me were persistent, because they say, oh, she's tired, oh, she's at home, or she's under the weather. There were some people who after a while were like, what do you mean she's under the weather, she's this, she's that. I haven't seen this woman for how many months? I will come to your house.
Okay.
And he would be like, okay, this person keeps asking, can I tell them? I'll say, yes, tell them. So people who noticed I wasn't there and ask, I would say, because he would say to me, okay, can I tell this person? Can I tell this person? And I was like, yes.
Right.
Because they're noticing, they're asking, they're interested. Yeah, tell them. So more people knew after a while if they really noticed.
Yeah.
So for the children, I don't know. I guess they did have a few friends that knew that they could speak with, but it wasn't a big everybody knew. And they just got on with it. I mean, I'm so proud of them. So proud of them. They did well. They carried on. They excelled at uni. My daughter, it was O-level, GCSEs and A levels, but so proud of them.
Good. That's awesome. That's awesome. So you carried on with how long did chemo go on for?
So chemo went on. I mean, chemo just goes on and on and on. I had 3 cycles, and then pre-transplant, I had another cycle, making 4 to prepare for the transplant.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you have the transplant?
In August, 6th of August 2019. Okay. I had the transplant.
Explain to us, lay people, what did the transplant involve?
So it's a stem cell transplant. And by the way, so at this time, they know you're on the register. Well, no, they know you need a transplant. Okay. So they're looking for donors. Okay. And they already know, they tell you, Black ethnic minorities, getting a donor is a challenge.
Yeah.
So that's something we already knew that it would be a challenge getting a donor for me because I'm Black.
Yeah.
So at that point, they now start asking you, for family.
Yeah.
Do you have any family? I mean, I'm not sure how many months in this was, but actually I hadn't told my cousins either.
Okay.
My brother knew, because in my head is, I tell my cousins, they tell my dad, they tell my uncle, who's my dad's brother. He cannot keep anything from my dad, therefore we're not telling him.
Okay.
But at this point, I now had to tell my cousins, and I had to tell them, you cannot tell your father.
Okay.
Because he doesn't keep anything from his brother. Mm. But anyway, at this time, I now had to tell my cousins, because it was like, where are you going to find a donor?
Oh, yeah.
So they ask, oh, do you have siblings? I'm like, well, my full siblings, even if they were here, they can't donate to me because they got sickle cell. Yeah. So that's not going to work. So it was like, okay, at this time it was like, whatever, cousins, half siblings, whoever, husband, children, just bring us. We just need people. So my brothers, my older brother, so he was sampled, my children were sampled. They were ready to sample my cousins who were going to either come down. My cousin in America was going to come down, and then basically it was just try and find a donor for me, because they couldn't find anyone on the bone marrow register. Right. And hence, hey, get on the register. That's why we're having this. Yes, we need more Black people on the register. It's really not that big a deal to get on the register, or it's just a cheap for the stem cell thing. They don't even take blood. It's a cheek swab. All you need is a swab in your cheek, and they check that. That's all it is to get on the stem cell register.
So how do you get on this? How do you do that? How do you get on the register?
So you can go on to, if you just Google blood.co.uk. There's a NHS blood and transplant thing. If
Right.
you go on there, it can tell you how to be a donor. And I think there's another one, which is the one my husband, it's dkms.org.uk.
Okay.
So getting on the stem cell register, or even to give blood. I mean, by the time I can't tell you how many units of blood, how many units of, platelets I had to have. We're talking so platelets, we're talking 40, 50, 60 units through this
Wow.
journey.
Wow.
Blood, we're talking, it's a lot. And it needs to come from somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone is asking what's the age barrier. There isn't a barrier, but they prefer, well, I don't know, prefer. So sort of 18 to 40 something is the ideal,
18 to 40.
is the ideal age. And I think usually they're more maybe into men, because I guess for women, other issues, losing blood and all of that, but they will have anybody. There is no barrier.
Okay.
They will test anybody and everybody.
Right.
With blood, yes, they have to take your blood and check, but please, we all have more than enough blood. We replenish it. We replenish blood cells, we replenish stem cell. You can't give too much. There are people who give blood regularly. It's you're not gonna become anemic because you donate. So please.
Yeah. And when you donate, you just never know. You might save a life. So please, it's so important that we do that. Okay, so Toyosi, did you find a match?
Well, my daughter was my donor.
Wow.
Yeah. They couldn't find anybody for me on the register.
Okay.
But by the time they did my brothers and also my brothers and my daughter, so they were just 50%. So it was not, so usually they're looking for 100% match.
Okay.
I didn't have that, but so my brothers and my daughter were a 50% match
Okay.
for
And that
me.
was good
So,
enough. They could
so
work that.
so it was the 50%, yeah, that they used. So as we're coming to this, they now had three people. I think in the end, I don't know how they arrived. It was my daughter, and she hadn't quite turned 18 at this time. She was 17.
Okay.
And initially they were like, oh, she's too young.
Okay.
Um, so she had to have counseling. She had to see a psychologist before they would allow her. I was like, yeah, she's 17. She's gonna be almost 18. She'll be okay. Yeah, so God had it all in hand right from the start. So she had to have counseling, which she went for, and actually she came back. She said, "Mom, can you imagine what they were asking me?" She said that they asked her, "Have you been pressurized?
Oh my goodness.
Are you being pressurized into doing this?" I said to her, I said, "What did you say?" I said, "You should have told them that we're not going to pay your school fees, Abby." She she said she just looked at them and she thought, are these people for real? She said to them, she's my mom.
Mm, mm.
I mean, I guess they're trying to do their best, make sure it's all okay. But yeah, so she had to have some sort of counseling
But if she was
before.
over 18, would she also have counseling, or just because she was under 18?
I think it was because of her age.
Okay.
I think it was
Because
because
I
of
was
her
thinking
age.
that will they do that with every single person that is a match, just to counsel them on what to expect?
Um, I mean, they will do some sort of counseling because they'll tell you what to expect.
Okay.
But I think for her, it was more about her age. She wasn't yet 18.
Right.
They had to be sure that mentally as well, it's something that she could do, and she was okay to do. Yes.
So from what did they entail this transplant?
So for her, so obviously everybody gets lots of tests, lots of blood tests, all of that. For her, just so they have to harvest the cells. So I think the week before the transplant, she had to go into hospital. So they sort of all the week before, you have to give yourself injections
Okay.
to stimulate the bone marrow
Right. Okay.
to produce more cells. I Are sickle cell carriers accepted? My daughter is a sickle carrier. Her genotype is AS.
Good.
So yes. Is that accepted for the stem cell or accepted for blood donations? Well, the answer is yes to both.
Both. Okay. That's
You
good.
can give blood if you're a sickle carrier, and yes, you're accepted onto the stem cell. Yes.
Okay, that's good. Yeah.
So she had to give herself injections. I think that was the toughest bit for her because she hates injections, she hates needles and all. I think the first one, and remember all of this time I'm not at home, it's just she and her dad.
Yeah.
So I think the first one, her dad had to help her.
Okay.
So you just give yourself injections into the tummy. And I think
To
she
the
had to have it
tummy.
for, yes.
Oh
Well,
no.
you can give it into your thigh or anything, but it just goes under the skin.
Oh.
So it's subcute. Yeah.
Wow.
So she had to do that for like 5 days. And this is basically just to stimulate the bone marrow to produce more cells.
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me.
Oh wow. I can't imagine doing that. Not to talk of someone who is under 18. Wow.
Yeah.
Yes.
So she did that. And then on the appointed day, you go into hospital
Yeah.
and they basically harvest the cells. And all this entails is it's like giving blood.
Okay.
So you have a needle. So I think before it used to be actually bone marrow. I remember Dr. Zoe saying you have the needle into your bone
Yeah.
and then they aspirate and all. No. So stem cells is actually like giving blood.
Okay.
So they stick a needle in you,
Yeah.
the blood, all the blood cells come out,
Yeah.
and they filter it to get the stem cells out. They actually return some of your own blood back. So
Oh.
it's like a filtration thing
Yeah. Yeah.
that they do.
Okay.
Some of the cells go back, the ones they don't need, and they just take out the stem cells. So you're in hospital for, I don't know, 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
You have that done, and then you go back home.
Wow.
So they do whatever it is they do with the blood cells, and they store them, prepare them and all. And on the day of the transplant, me, it's like having a blood transfusion.
So it's putting it in you from okay.
Yes, yes. So it's putting it back. So it's just like having a blood transfusion. It's not painful
So
at all.
how soon after that do you find out if it worked or not?
So it's about, actually I'm gonna check because you actually don't know it's the process, because I mean people say, oh, can I have a transplant, we cure sickle cell, cure this, da da da, but it doesn't always work. And they tell you, so there's a 25% chance of death. So it's not like it's risk free,
Wow, 25%.
you know. Yeah.
But I get
So 1 in 4.
1 in 4, yeah.
Yeah. That you die from the procedure. There's a possibility that it doesn't work, that the cells don't take. So it's not all, oh, you
So
have a.
that's good. But when you say die from the procedure, as in die from having the transplant.
Well, one could, I mean, they've done everything they can to prepare you, but anything can happen. I mean, the post-transplant was actually the most horrible time for me.
Why?
With,
Why was
with
that?
everything initially, they come, they tell you, oh, this can, in fact, I had one doctor that I hated seeing
Okay.
because he will come and say to me, oh, you will have this. So this is trying to tell me side effects
Okay.
of chemotherapy. Oh, you'll be sick, you have diarrhea, you have vomiting, you have this, you have this. And I'm looking at him and saying, I'm not having that. I think at some point I had to say to him, excuse me, you say this can happen, this can happen, this can happen. Don't tell me I will have anything. You don't know what I will or will not have.
Yeah.
And at the end of my first counseling thing, they were looking, sorry, chemo, they were looking at me in hospital because I had no vomiting, no sickness, no nothing, no that. I was fine, and they were all just there amazed and thinking, really? Yeah, I'm like, yeah, really? God's got my back.
Yes, absolutely.
So really, God's got my back. Yeah. So I mean, even with chemo, um, it's tough, but I think for me, post-transplant was the most traumatic time. There was a time I could not swallow. Um, Basically, it's like pins in your throat, even swallowing my saliva. I couldn't. They'll bring so solid liquid, bring food to me. I would cry just to swallow. They had to try and fit me with an NG tube. They tried that. It didn't work. I couldn't keep it down. And actually, I had to have, it's called TPN. It's peripheral nutrition. If you cannot eat,
Yeah.
I had to have that because I physically could not swallow. I would have to have morphine just to be able to drink. So yeah, it's not fun and games. Um, so you asked about, I'm looking for because they give you a thing, yeah. So after you've had the transplant,
Yeah.
it can take about, is that 4 or 5 days or about, I'm just trying to look, before they know whether it's happening Monday, Tuesday. I think it takes about a week or, it takes time, or a few weeks for them to.
Were you documenting all of this, everything that was going on?
Not absolutely everything, but yes, I did, yeah, a little bit.
Okay.
I did, so little things like all the transfusions, I was documenting, and then little bits about, what I was going through, my blood test results. There were times I had a headache,
Mm.
a headache that wouldn't go away, and they thought I had a CT scan, they thought I'd had a stroke.
Yeah.
I remember that night in the hospital, someone had to watch me. They had to be with me all night because the CT showed what maybe like a stroke, and they were there looking at me and thinking, okay, are you all right? Can you see how many fingers? And I'm looking at them and thinking, I'm okay.
Mm.
So yeah, so headaches, what else? What did I? So the blood test. There's one time my jaw was swollen. Sorry, they didn't think I had a stroke. They thought I had a brain bleed.
Okay.
So yeah. So just little things. I'm not a good document keeper, but I did keep, write that down. So when I had my third bone marrow aspiration, yeah, little things here and there. I was looking for.
I'm trying to understand something, Toyosi, because I'm not medical at that. So you had the transplant. Now, all the challenges you said you experienced, was it because the transplant from your daughter, was it your body trying to accept it?
Yeah.
That's why you were having all the challenges.
So basically what they do, they prepare your bone marrow and they sort of kill your own cells,
Okay.
basically, because what they're gonna do is replace my cells
Yeah.
with her cells.
Okay.
As with anything, even just blood,
Yeah.
people can react
Okay.
to blood transfusion. I mean, by the time we were at this stage where they were preparing my bone marrow, I had so many blood transfusions that I had now developed antibodies.
Oh, I see.
I didn't have them before, so I had now developed antibodies. So they also now have to try and remove and stop, kill all of that,
Okay.
so that I wouldn't fight, because obviously you bring a foreign thing into my body
Right.
is going to try and fight it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah. So basically it's just fighting. So you have the chemo, they kill your cells, they prepare your bone marrow just to try and limit um the reaction
Right. Okay. That's
to
fine.
that and the fight, because it's a war and it's an ongoing war, even up to now.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you see me, if you look at, I mean, I'm having a bit of a flare now because it's like graft versus host disease. So my cells will fight,
Right.
and her cells need to keep on suppressing mine. So sometimes I have a flare where my skin is sort of dry and breaking up. So
Wow.
it's an ongoing thing.
My goodness.
Yeah. I was trying to, yeah. What did you ask me? I can't remember. So
Um, I think you've answered it. I was talking about why you were having all the reactions. Well, I think you've explained it. Wow.
hmm.
So after about how many days did they realize that? Thank God that it was successful.
So it's about, so that's deal. So it's actually about a month or over a month, because I've got here D plus 36.
Okay.
So they're expecting, so they just keep on doing the bloods and all of that, but it takes weeks
Okay.
before they actually know whether, because what happens is her cells now have to engraft,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I then need to start producing. Um, yeah, producing, my bone marrow now needs to start producing the new cells, basically.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Just thinking that God is really just awesome. Even giving the
Mm.
doctors the knowledge, all to do what to do, how to do all this thing. It's just amazing. True.
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah.
Wow.
And then yeah, I'm just trying to see if there's anything. So at that time, actually, after the transplant, so that was when I was really after the transplant, and you get a temperature. It was then I was now really ill, temperature. I was really unwell, couldn't eat, couldn't drink, and then too much information, but little things, diarrhea, you get all sorts of things. While all of that is going. So actually, that was my worst post-transplant,
Wow.
was the worst period. And then remember, you're also really very susceptible.
Yes. Yeah.
So you're not people cannot come in
Mm-hmm.
because they don't want anybody to give you anything, obviously. And anybody coming in there, they need to mask up and gown up, yeah, and all of that. Yeah, and they limit the numbers.
Must have been quite.
What else?
When you say it now, it sounds like, oh, it just happened, but I can imagine that it must have been really tough on you, your husband, children. Must have
Hmm.
been a really, really challenging time. Wow.
Yeah, and I mean, I think Yeah, I think it was tough, but I just think it was probably tougher for my husband and children.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time as well, that was when my niece and nephew came to live
Okay.
with us.
Right.
So here was I thinking at that time, oh my God, I'm sat here in hospital and I'm leaving this man with with two extra children. And I'm just sitting in hospital on my bed chilling.
Not
You
just
know, while,
no, I
while
feel
he's having to manage
ah,
manage everything. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, what else? So I don't know. I guess you need them to say how their own perspective and how it was. You know, I know friends, I know people who have told me how they would come in there, they will smile at me, and when they're out the door, they start crying,
oh,
you know, because obviously they're not gonna sit in there, you know, I know.
they had to be
People
brave
will,
whilst
yeah,
they were with you.
they will come in, yeah, come in there, smile, we chat, we gist, and then they say they will run out of the door. And then just, especially when they first heard,
Yeah, yeah.
and then run out, and then they're sobbing and sobbing and sobbing, but certainly not in my presence. Um,
Uh,
yeah.
okay.
And you know, there were people who week in, week out, every week, whatever, they were there. My cousin was coming from Nigeria regularly to come and check up on me. I guess he was also the a link back home, so he kept on coming to check. I mean, you know,
God for support.
God surrounds us with people.
Yeah, yeah,
And even on my sickle cell journey,
yeah.
I've I've always had people, I've had friends, you know, they're always there, you know. They're people if I land in hospital, next minute they're there, you know, you don't have to say come, don't come,
Mm,
they're there. I've just always had people because it's also not easy looking or managing someone with sickle cell.
mm. Yep.
They're in pain, they're screeching in pain. When we're in pain, we're very bad-mannered, you know, and they're there. They have to be there. There's not a lot they can do. They cannot take the pain away. You're screeching and screaming. So friends themselves go
Toyosi,
through it.
this is a good time to ask you this question. So, your mother had sickle cell, you had
Yes,
sickle cell, and
yes,
you went and married a man who was is AS, right?
yes.
Why did you do that, knowing that there was a possibility that your children might have the sickle cell?
Abomination, right?
Yes.
So all my life, that had been my main criteria.
Okay.
There is no way. If you're not AA, it's not happening.
Mm-hmm.
You know, even from a medical perspective,
Yeah.
for me, it's like, how can you cannot, there's too much pain, there's too much suffering, you cannot carry this on.
Yeah.
And that was all my life I had known. No AA, no marriage. And when the crunch came to the crunch, I think at some point in my life, I what became what became more important to me for the man was not their genotype,
Okay.
but their love for God
Mm,
and their relationship
mm,
with God.
yeah.
That became my priority
Okay.
at some point. If you didn't love God and you were not walking with God,
Yeah.
I couldn't marry you. And when God brought the man, lo and behold, he was AS. And I told him, I can't marry you. My genotype is ASS, your AS. It's not gonna happen.
Mm, mm.
Um, And I thought, how do I mean, I'd lost my mom by this time anyway, so it was just my dad, but it was like, how do I even tell him this? And actually, when I told my dad, he wasn't. I thought he was going to shout and scream, but actually,
He
he
did.
didn't.
Okay.
I think the reservations, there were more reservations from your side, and that's absolutely understandable. Who
Yeah.
wants to go and bring on this thing that they don't know, they're not aware of, they don't know how to handle? And I resisted because I thought, really, I'm thinking, God, I mean, obviously, this cannot be you.
Mm.
You're not going to ask me to marry. If the person is there, yes, there's no way he can be my husband. I mean, really, that's easy. And at some point, I went to see, I was meant to see Pastor Agu,
Yeah.
and knowing Pastor Agu, he forgot. And Sister Ify was the one that was at home.
Okay.
So I went to meet Pastor Ify at home, and we just had a chat, and she was like, Toyosi, actually, sickle cell, sickle cell, sickle cell. So yeah, you might have a sickle cell. Is this the worst thing that could ever happen to you
Mm.
in your life?
Wow.
I mean, has it limited your life so much that you think it's actually the worstest thing?
Mm. Mm.
And that, we serve a God. God is in control.
Yeah.
God is God.
Yeah.
God can deal with it. If God is saying, marry this person, then you just have to trust God and
Absolutely.
let God handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in the end, that was it. I got my peace with it. And yes, I married him. Are there people, I mean, I have friends, classmates who have said to me, oh, how could you? And I'm like, well, this is where we are now. I'm sure there's some friends who have thought about it and not said anything
Mm.
to me. And there's some who have just gotten on with it.
Yeah.
But hey, it's okay. It's a choice we made. I know there are families, I know that there are marriages that break up because of sickle
Yeah.
cell.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Not everyone
but
is able to. Not everyone has the capacity. You know.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's tough. It's tough watching somebody go through that pain, not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
It's tough watching your child go through that. You cannot do anything about it
Yeah.
physically. So yeah,
So, and
it's
your
tough.
son has the sickle cell disease too, right?
Yes, it does.
Did he ever ask
And
you that, Mom, why did you marry Dad if you knew that you were SS?
well, before before obviously I asked him if I could say this, and he said it's fine.
Yeah.
But I actually also asked him. I said, so don't you, with me, as I say, it's always something I've known, and with him as well, he's always known that he's special. It's not everything that everybody can do that he can do.
Yeah.
And thank God he's been well. Um and oh, I've forgotten, what was I gonna say? Yeah. So I asked him how he feels about it, and his answer to me was like, because I'm like, I'm a doctor, I've gone through this, and then we've done this. You're here. He said, well, if you guys didn't get married, I wouldn't be here.
Oh, that's so sweet. And that's the
You know, that
truth.
that he wouldn't exist. So really, if he's blaming us, then so what? So he'd rather not be here?
That is,
So yeah, if we didn't get married, he wouldn't be here.
yeah.
So it's okay. But I guess God gives us the grace and the strength to
Yes.
carry whatever He gives to us.
Yes.
And for me, the other thing, I guess, with the thing about sickle cell is that you might have a shortened lifespan.
Mm.
You die early.
Yeah.
And I thought for me, I'm like, do you know what? When God says it's time, we go. There are people without sickle cell who have died before me, younger than me.
Yes, absolutely.
Different things kill different people.
Yes.
Something has to kill each one of us.
Yes.
There are people, you're walking on the streets, a car hits you, die. There are people who are hale and healthy, no medical problems. They go for a walk, they drop down dead.
Yes.
So something's gonna kill somebody. So hey, I got sickle cell. I'm still here. People without sickle cell went younger. God is keeping me. My hope and my prayer, I will see my children's children.
Amen.
That's the prayer. But in the end, when God says it's time, we're all going.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Thank God. Thank God. Wow. Toyosi, this has been awesome. Now, there's some questions that I would love for you to please answer. There was a question I can't find it now. Whoever posted it, a question about a young lady going through cancer. Sorry, not cancer, sickle cell and having children. Please, can you repost that question, whoever it was? I saw that. But whilst you're doing that, there's the question, how is your life different now how is your life different from pre and post cancer?
pre and post cancer. Well, I'll actually say pre. I'll start with pre and post sickle cell.
Okay.
Like now, the little things, being weary of the cold.
Okay.
I'm not so weary anymore because I'm not thinking, oh my goodness, if I get exposed, I'm gonna have a crisis.
Okay.
So there's that all the pain. I mean, yes, I've got different kinds of issues or pains now, but not that nasty, horrible, killing bone pain. So yeah, pre and post sickle cell. Pre and post cancer. Um, I don't know how my life is different.
Is anything has anything changed? Your outlook to life or anything?
I think always having had medical issues, my outlook has always been a bit different. Anyway, I don't think so much
Okay.
the cancer has I don't think the cancer itself has changed that much because in the end, actually, God gave me double for my trouble.
Mm.
So yeah. Um, I don't know unless I'm missing something. Someone asked about COVID. So for me, when people having been 2019, having been in hospital in that little room, there were times they said to me, "You're not to step out of this room." I remember one time in summer 2019,
Yeah.
I was neutropenic and they were like, "Don't leave your room." But I was getting so frustrated. I said to them, I'm going out. I'm going to stand in that sun, even if it's and my room had no windows. And I'm like, even if it's for 5, 10 minutes, I am going out. And there's nothing you can do about it. If I stay in this room, I'm going to go mad. So, and they were looking and they knew I was a doctor. They're like, doctor, you can't. I'm like, I'm going, and I
I hate
went
that
and I
doctors
said,
are terrible patients.
sis, in a room, somebody is telling you. So this wasn't just I couldn't go out of the ward. I couldn't go out of my room.
Wow.
I'm like, no, the sun is shining.
Yeah.
I don't have windows. I'm in a cell. I'm like, no, I'm going. In fact, there was one of the times I went home, I had to say to them, if I don't go home, I'm going to go crazy. I need to go home. You need to allow me to go to my house. Even if it's just a week, I need to be out of here just for my own brain,
Yeah.
psychologically.
Yeah.
So having been through all of that and then we're going so I was allowed home about a month after the transplant. And this was the end of 2019, and this was not where COVID
Yeah.
was now starting and all. So for me, when people were moaning about COVID, that, oh, they're having to sit at home and whatever, do you know it's all about perspective?
Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it was progress.
Yes. Yes.
For me, I was like, thank God it's COVID. I'm out of a hospital
Yes.
room.
Yeah.
I'm in my house.
Yeah.
You want me to stay in my house? It's okay. I've got more than one room in my house I can walk around.
Mm, mm.
So for me, COVID was promotion.
I can imagine after being in hospital for almost
Yeah,
6 months. Yeah.
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 So COVID was promotion for me, and it was also, it helped me in that, okay, it also limited people coming to anybody's
Yeah.
house anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was fine. It was fine for me. And even those times when they were like, oh, nobody, don't go for a walk, don't whatever, I would go, me and my family, we can put on a mask. I'm going for a walk. I have been promoted. I'm out of a hospital bed. Nobody is telling me I'm not going in the fresh air. I will go for a walk. The God that has brought me this far will take
Yes.
me along. So COVID for me, it was okay.
Okay, I've sent the question out. Do you have any advice for women managing sickle cell and looking to go through childbearing?
I think everybody's journey is different.
Yeah.
I think sickle cell affects everybody differently.
Mm-hmm.
I think each person needs to know themselves, listen to the advice of the doctors, but you also know yourself more.
Yeah.
Um, and God's got your back. God, that for me, pregnancies were fine, easy. I didn't have morning sickness, nothing.
Wow. That's
I
good.
just think don't be scared. Don't overthink it. You know, take each day as it comes. When the time comes, if there's a challenge, you deal with it. God is there. God knows the end from the beginning. He knows what you're going to go through.
Yeah.
The God that has brought you this far will take you through. We just need to trust God that He knows and He loves. He loves us.
Yes.
But we also just need to play our part. Don't overdo it. Don't pace yourself. Drink well, eat well, exercise. If the cold sets you off, keep warm. If dehydration sets you off, keep warm. Your body if you slow down.
I think it's
Um, but don't I think don't prejudge everything, and don't just believe it's all gonna go bad. Maybe that was the thing. I'm like, with God, there is nothing I cannot do. If God says I can do it, I can do it. Sickle cell doesn't tell me what I can or cannot do. Is God.
I love that. Yes. It's God that determines what you can and cannot do, not this sickle cell any disease.
Yeah,
Amazing.
yeah.
Thank you. Wow, Toyosi, this has been an awesome, awesome, awesome testimony. You have so much strength. I'm sure even you're not even aware that you how much you've encouraged us with everything that you've been through. And Mr. Obatusin, well done. Well done. Honestly, we really, really, on behalf of the Hangout Cafe family and everyone here, all your everyone here, we want to say thank you. And I say this, I'm not just saying it, but I know that I remember once I went with a friend who had cancer to the hospital, and there was a lady there who didn't have anyone with her. My friend was telling me that a lot of women don't have support. You know, people go through challenges like this and they don't have support. And even like Toyosi said, some marriages break up when things like this happen, but you have been there, you know, through thick and thin and everything. We really appreciate you. Thank you so much, Mr. Obatusin. And to your children, your brave children, well done. Thank you. Thank you for every other person that supported you throughout the journey. Thank you. Thank you. When you have friends that support, when you have family that support, we don't take it for granted. So we appreciate you. Mr. Obatusin again, yes, you deserve an award. Seriously. No, you do. You do. But Toyosi, let's end by you. Again, please talk about blood donor so that our people, because there's a shortage amongst the Black community. Please push it again one more time before we leave.
Please, 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 please. People need blood out there. And it's not just about sickle cell.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people have, when was it? Was it a few weeks ago? We're talking about childbirth.
Yeah.
You know, obstetric emergencies, road traffic accidents.
Yes.
You know, we've got blood. The blood cannot finish. You give it away, you make more. You give it away, you make more. And I know we're all busy. You know, life is happening to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, you have to go here to donate. You don't have the time and all of that. I know sometimes it takes time away from us, but we have to be we have to plan it. We have to be intentional.
Yes.
About this. But please, 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 for those, some of us cannot donate. You know, someone with sickle cell cannot donate. But there are people, if you're AS, AC, whatever, A, you can donate. You go there, they test you, and they actually put limitations sometimes for people, because that's another bugbear. People who want to try and donate and they say, oh, you can't. They found malaria antibodies, but ridiculous things. But at least please try. You just don't know who you might help.
Yeah.
Incidentally, my husband had he had, even before all of this happened with me, he had gone, I think they did the cycle thing, just raising awareness and donating blood.
Okay.
And then I had been thinking, we were thinking about actually doing something in church.
Yeah.
Previous to that, getting the blood transplant people to actually come to church.
Okay.
And for people maybe after service to just give blood, donate. And then can you imagine he has a sense of humor. About a month later, I was diagnosed with leukemia. I mean, really? But hey, so please, 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 it's just a blood test to get on to donate blood regularly and to get on the stem cell register. It's just a cheek swab. And if you're called on, a lot of people are not called upon to give, but just be on that register. You don't know who you could help. It's children.
Yeah.
It's adults. Look, me, I'm somebody's family.
Yeah.
If it's something you can do and you don't lose anything, please, 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 let's all just try and help. There is life in the blood.
Absolutely.
There's life in the blood. Without blood, we're dead.
Yep.
Yeah, so there is life in the blood. Please, 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 please. And we thank you for the blood of Jesus, because also, it's the blood of Jesus that heals us in the end. So there is life in the blood of Jesus as well. I'm still here. It's the blood of Jesus.
Yes. It's been your strength.
Donate.
Toyosi, thank you so much. Can we again show her some love, appreciation? Wow. Thank you. You have been a blessing to us. Thank you. You provided insight. You shared your testimony. We really do appreciate you, Toyosi. And thank you for agreeing to do this. I know I kept. Thank you. Thank you so much. No, honestly,